This podcast contains mature content and listener discretion is advised.
Also, be advised, we are not medical professionals and this podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
Running through the streets, solving all the mysteries, crushes and aliens, lots of other crazy things, laughing all the way. All we know is we don't know Kayla and Maggie, breaking down conspiracies, learning all the way, searching through time and space. Kayla and Maggie, now that's done, let's crack a beer and
Welcome to Mystery Team Inc.
And we're in.
We're in.
Welcome back to Mystery Team Inc.
I'm Maggie.
She's not.
I'm so used to me going first and then you going first.
And I'm Maggie.
Great, nailed it. I love
The
it.
podcast where Kayla doesn't have her computer in front of her and doesn't know what to do with her hands.
I really don't. If you want to see what I end up doing with my hands, which I think I'm probably just going to be like businessman at a meeting.
Perfect,
hands,
yeah.
You should go watch this on your YouTube because we're doing video.
On your YouTube?
Oh, God.
Just turn on your old YouTube.
The kids
With
are
your clicker.
posting videos on their YouTube. On our YouTube.
Go
on
watch us
your
on YouTube. On your YouTube app. Oh, they're on
There
their
you
phone.
go. They're on their phone. What? Who uses their computer to watch YouTube anymore?
Do you have any business?
Yeah, go to our Patreon.
Which we're about to plug right now. That sounds like so much fun. I can't wait to join the Patreon. Actually, though, I've been looking into like setting up a Discord and all the like fun things you can put in your Discord, and I'm really excited about it. So go check it out.
Can you?
Patreon.com/Mystery Team Inc. Probably.
Okay.
Like we can do it.
We need a Twilight channel.
Mhm.
We need a Taylor Swift channel.
Yes, we do.
You don't have to be a part of that
I'd
one.
like to be a part of it. I like
Okay,
Taylor
great.
Swift.
Great.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are like, I like her, but I can't with all of you.
No, I can.
Okay,
That's
great.
actually the thing I like most about her. I like haven't listened to all of her music, but I love all of the conspiracies that surround her.
You're my best friend.
Yeah, I know.
I love that your favorite part of
Taylor Swift
Taylor
is
Swift is a conspiracy.
yes, correct.
Oh my God. I love that. Me too.
Are you ready for a mystery?
Yes.
Okay. Today we are covering the mysterious life and death of Ludwig II of Bavaria, also known as the Mad King Ludwig.
Okay. This is one of the ones that I've had on my list.
Is it really?
Yes. I'm so excited.
So I'm sure you remember I did a TikTok about it.
Yes, I remember because it was on my list and then you made a TikTok and I took it off. The good news is I don't remember anything before yesterday.
Great.
So this is all fresh.
I'm Maggie. Oh, I said that already.
Yeah,
So you
I
knew
got that.
I'm really excited. I think this is just like a fascinating topic. And my sources for the episode are The Swan King by Christopher McIntosh, which is a good book, and a book that I think is maybe for children called Not Happily Ever After by Susan Barnett Braun. No shade to this book, but I wanted to listen to the audiobook of it, and there isn't one. There is one, but it is recorded by AI, and I've never listened to an AI recording
I didn't know
before,
it
so I was like,
existed.
I feel like I have to like just this once. And let me tell you,
Oh.
so it was like palatable, but the problem is there were some idiosyncrasies that like it didn't get. Like, for example, because this is a story about a royal family, there's like Ludwig the first, second, third. And so
Oh no.
clearly what happened was the first time they ran the AI, when it said like Ludwig 1, it pronounced it Ludwig I.
Oh no.
So they were like corrected it by saying, no, that means the first. And then anytime the pronoun I appeared in the text, the AI said the first. So it would be like a quote from Ludwig, and it would be like, the first cannot deal with their hypocrisy. The first must leave. And I thought for the first 3 or 4 chapters that he always spoke in the third person about himself.
Oh.
No, it's just thought that I means the first because clearly somewhere along the line they were like, oh, it's getting confused about how we like annotate. Another really good one is there's a doctor in the story named Dr. Gudin, and it interpreted the abbreviation DR period as drive, like a street, like Riverside Drive.
Interesting.
So the whole time it kept calling him Drive Gooden. And again, you have to understand that like I was listening to this without that context. So it took me so long to figure
I
out
never would have figured it
what
out.
the fuck was
I would have
happening.
been like, what a weird first name.
Well, you know how I finally figured it out? I went to the reviews of the audiobook and someone was like, it always says the first instead of I. And I read that before I even bought the book and I was like, I don't know what that means. And then like 3 chapters in, I was like, I get it.
Oh my God.
So yeah, maybe don't check that one out.
Can we start
the first one?
calling ourselves the first?
The first? Yeah, I am Maggie the first.
The first is really exciting.
Is the first ready for a mystery?
The first is so ready.
Also have to give a content warning for these episodes because there is death and talk of suicide. So content warning for that. And without further ado, let's get into the mysterious life and death of the Mad King Ludwig, which is, you'll find out, a misnomer because I don't think he's mad, but it's fine.
But he is a king.
He is a king.
He's the first.
He's actually the second.
Oh.
You'll hear about it.
Now I'm confused.
So Ludwig II was king of Bavaria from 1864 until his mysterious death in 1886 at the age of 40. He was born in 1845. He's most famous for 2 things: fairy tale castles and being the only patron and the only reason that we really even have Richard Wagner.
No way.
Yes. If you ever took a music history class or if you were in an orchestra, you probably had a teacher at some point teaching you about the ring cycle say something like, we only have this because of he was like beloved by a rich patron who funded all of his crazy operas.
I don't remember this.
Okay. In music history, they teach you about Wagner, and like basically the only thing I even remember from that unit is the ring cycle and the fact that he existed because he had like a rich, he was so broke that he was like not able to keep making operas, and he had a rich patron. That was King Ludwig. So we'll talk about that.
That's funny because I did participate in something called Wagner Fest.
Oh, I know. I did too.
Did you go to Wagner
Yeah.
Fest? Wagner Fest, for anyone who doesn't know, outside of the 2 of us and maybe the other 10 people who went, was a thing at our high school where they showed the entire ring cycle and we would just sit in the theater and watch it.
It was like took place over the course of like 24 hours.
Yeah,
because,
we watched the whole ring cycle.
because each one of those operas is like 4 hours long, maybe more, and there's 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So you would come at like 3 p.m. or something, and you would just like stay over at night in sleeping bags. Like
We did. We put sleeping. I
Yeah.
remember one year we had to leave. I don't know if you were there that year, but I had to leave to go do our production of Midsummer.
I think I only
And then
went
I
one
came
year.
back.
I think once was enough for me.
Yeah, it was not enough for me.
That's fair.
I loved it.
You were an oboe kid though,
That's very different from a flute kid.
especially in Wagner.
God, oboe kids are
They're a rare breed.
It's hard.
I know.
It's a hard instrument.
the little voice break. It's hard. Ludwig was called the Swan King or the Fairy King.
Why Swan?
You're gonna find out.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So as I mentioned, I did a TikTok about his death, and I'm doing this now actually to get justice for Ludwig because I did pretty cursory research for that TikTok, and I fell into the propaganda trap, much like Cleopatra, where it's like everything we know about her is from her haters. Like Ludwig, as we'll learn from this story, had a lot of haters who also propagandaed him, and that is pretty like well accepted in the historical record. And it was only like in the last like 50 years or so that people started being like, actually don't think any of this is true. Like he may have been a victim of a lot of circumstance. So I said in the TikTok, and this is, everyone says this, that he bankrupted Bavaria building castles, but it turns out he actually used his own money and went deeply into debt to do it.
Oh, okay.
So yes. Anyway, I'll attempt to get justice for Ludwig here.
We love justice here. We got justice for Houdini too.
I know. We are a justice podcast, if nothing else. Young Ludwig looks like the kind of person who would be in your college orientation welcome group, and you'd be like, is he hot or is he just the only like eligible person in this group of 12 people. And like
exactly what
you
you're talking
you decide to talk to him, but then it turns out that he only cares about like Russian history or like
God.
or like he plays like jazz bass and he just like really loves looping pedals and like he's just gonna ignore you because he's just
Yeah.
really into the looping
I
pedals.
know exactly who you're talking about. 100%. 100%.
Is this not that kid? Where then
That's
like it
that
turns out
kid.
he's really into Marxism and that's
This
why he
one.
has
That's like a year after you graduate. You
this is like his
meet
early
up.
20s. Yeah, and he looks like that. Yeah, for sure.
You're like randomly in the city again.
Yes. And we will come to find out that the people of Bavaria thought he was the hottest person that ever walked the earth.
But there were only like 12 people in their orientation group, right?
Right. So he was actually born Prince Otto. But his grandfather, Ludwig I, was like, he was born on my birthday. Our birthday is the Feast of Saint Ludwig. So that was user error on your part to his parents. And you're going to need to change his name. And they did. They
I
changed his
would.
name to Ludwig. And then they had a second son who they named Otto.
Oh, God.
Ludwig was...
Scraps.
What? No, they loved the name. Actually, you're going to find out he was the golden child.
Mm.
Otto was.
He was the first.
I don't know if he was the first. He might have been a
No,
second.
I just mean like in vibe.
Yeah, in vibe for sure. So Ludwig was raised with the explicit message that he was going to be king someday. And as happens with kids like this, I think he maybe delayed sensing a total or developing a total sense of other people's interiority. Like
Mm.
some of his behavior later in life is very much that of a person who just like has always been king and doesn't like understand.
Wait, is he a prince?
He is at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're like the royal.
They're the royal
They're
family of
literally-
Bavaria.
okay.
He's the prince of Bavaria. He's in line, next in line for
I
the
thought
throne.
he was like, oh, sorry, I kicked your foot.
No, you're good.
I thought he was like kind of like a cousin.
No,
And
he's
they
the
were
guy.
like, you will be king.
No, he's the guy.
Okay, so he will be king.
He's Simba,
Oh, okay.
and he will be king. That's why he's called the Mad King.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
and his grandfather was actually like deposed, so he stepped down while he was alive, and his son, Ludwig's father, took over and ruled as king, and Ludwig's grandfather just like was a royal who like stepped out of the role, and his father took over because that'll
Why?
come up later. It was a lot of politics.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
enough. That's enough of an answer for me.
So yes, he had a younger brother named Otto who was the golden child, and I think Ludwig really felt that. Like he just got a lot more like attention. First of all, neither of them got any attention from their parents, but Otto got the scraps of attention and Ludwig got basically nothing, because he was expected to be. It's like the sense that I got is that they adultified him as a really young child because he was going to be king. So they like
Mhm.
were put a lot of pressure on him and really made him like they parentified him, I feel like. Whereas Otto was allowed to just kind of be a kid because he was he's not next in line. He's like the next prince. So Ludwig was super introverted. He didn't like being around other people. He spent most of his time as a kid sitting and staring at the murals in the castle and just making up stories about the characters in the paintings.
No.
I know. He did not like what a prince is supposed to like. He liked dressing up in costumes. He hated playing soldiers. He liked to do solo performances only for himself. Like he didn't want to be perceived, but he would just like dress up and yeah.
He would have loved podcasts.
R.I.P. Ludwig. You would have loved podcasts. He was mostly raised by his nanny, Fraulein Mehlhaus, who was a like surrogate mother to him. Because like I said, and this was really normal at the time. Like royal parents didn't raise their kids.
Yeah.
Like someone else did. So his nanny was that person for him. And as he got older, he discovered that his passion in life was beautiful things. He loved art. He loved costumes. He loved architecture. He was a huge nature person. And like later in his life, he would spend a lot of his time just riding horses around the Alps, basically, like around the alpine regions of Bavaria. When he was old enough to not really need a nanny anymore, his nanny was dismissed, and she actually went off and married a baron and became known as Baroness Leonrod.
Mm.
Good for her. A few years later, when Ludwig was 12, the Baroness saw her first Wagner opera, Lohengrin, and she was like, oh my God, Ludwig would love this.
R.I.P. Ludwig, he would have loved Wagner.
You're going to
He
find
did,
out.
Yeah.
So she wrote a letter to him and was like, you need to go to the opera as a 12-year-old. And his parents were like, no. As you know, because you play the oboe, conservative Bavarians did not approve of Wagner. It was like way too fantastical, too showy. There were like revolutionary ideas in there. Think about like, this is the same time period in Bavaria as like Spring Awakening. So it's very like,
That's
go to
really
school,
good context for me.
go to school, sit in your fucking desk, and like don't talk. That's like the vibe.
Don't have
They
sex
don't
with Leah
want-
Michelle.
Yeah, they don't want 12-year-olds like running around doing opera. They want them like playing in the woods and killing themselves. Like they don't, you know, like that's
it.
That's it.
And playing the piano.
Yeah.
One of them played the piano, I believe.
Mhm.
Oh, because he sings about
Yeah.
his piano teacher.
Mhm. They were like, no, you can't go. You're 12. 3 years later, Lohengrin was being staged again. And he was like, I really want to go. And he was 15. And they were like, fine, whatever. You're basically an adult. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Lohengrin, you actually aren't, because if you've ever heard Here Comes the Bride, that comes from this opera. That is the bridal march that plays during the wedding of this opera.
I didn't know that.
It is loosely based on a medieval German romance. The story of the opera is thematic in Ludwig's life. So we're going to take a quick detour so I can tell you the plot of this Wagner opera.
Great.
So there's a duchess named Elsa. She's been wrongfully accused of murdering her brother by his guardian, who is the count.
Mm-hmm.
The count tells the king, you should punish her for murdering her brother and let me take her dead brother's place as the duke. Like he's trying to like move up in status.
Mhm.
The king is like, let's settle this in trial by combat.
Perfect.
So he's like, who's going to be your champion? And Elsa prays for a knight that she's seen in her dreams to come fight for her. And lo and behold, a knight appears on stage in a boat drawn by a swan.
Okay.
He fights the count.
I have a question.
Mhm.
How?
It's a fake swan.
Is it like Milky White?
It is. Yes. He fights the count. He defeats him, but he spares his life because he's a good knight. Good night.
Good night.
And then
Bad night.
Bad night. Goosebumps reference.
If you've ever watched our
Old
if you were there
lives.
for that. Oh God, that
We
was
gotta
so
figure out a
fun.
way to do those again.
I DM'd Scholastic.
Did you?
I don't know what more you want from me.
Guys, I know we talk about it all the time. We used to do live shows where we would read Goosebumps Choose Your Own Scare, and we would let the viewers vote on choosing the scare. And they were so good, and Scholastic won't let us do it.
We did it by firelight on your
I
rooftop.
know.
God, that was so fun.
So the knight comes in, he defeats the count, but he spares his life because he's a good knight, bad knight. And then to Elsa, he's like, marry me? And she's like, okay. And he's like, but only on one condition, that you never ask my name. She's like, bet. Then the king. I knew that
So
would
what
get
does
you.
she call him?
I don't
Knight?
know. I think she calls him like my knight or my prince or something.
That's cute.
So the king puts the knight in charge. He's like, you're the duke now. And all the bad guys are like, why should he get Henry?
We don't even know his name.
That's what they'd say. They're like, why is he even the duke? We don't even know what even is his name. So they're like, well, we have to turn the king against him. Like, how are we going to do it? And then it is revealed in the opera that the count's wife, the countess, is a witch. And she's like, oh, I know.
This is pretty far into the story to reveal a witch, is it not?
This is a different structural style.
Okay,
Also,
great.
keep in mind, these are like 4 hours long. So this is still like the first act,
you're right,
probably.
you're right.
But she's like, let's trick Elsa into asking his name and like ruin their marriage. And then she's like, then we'll get to be the Duke and Duchess. There's a lot of logic happening. I'm sure it's explained in the opera. But so they're like,
It might not be.
but it might not be. So they're like planting seeds of doubt in Elsa's mind. And at the end, there's shenanigans, fun and games. And then Elsa can't help herself. So finally she asks him his name. And then he's like, I have to leave now. You fucked up. And the count rushes in and attacks the knight. And the knight kills him this time. And he's like, now we have to go tell the king the truth, which is, and he reveals himself to be Lohengrin, who is a knight of the Grail. And the laws of the Holy Grail in this story say that the Knights of the Grail have to be anonymous. And if their identity is revealed, they have to go home to the Castle of the Grail. So
Oh, man.
Lohengrin's boat comes back on stage for him to leave. And then he's like, please, drawn by Swan. And then he's like, please take my sword and ring for your brother, who will be rightfully restored as the Duke. And then the Count's wife appears and she's like, your brother's alive. He's the Swan. I cursed him and turned him into a swan.
Oh my God, I forgot she's a witch.
She's a witch.
Oh God. This feels like...
And then Lohengrin says a prayer. The swan turns back into her brother. He's crowned Duke. And then a dove comes down and draws Lohengrin's boat away to the Castle of the Grail. And Elsa is so grief-stricken that she
dove
dies.
Is the sister.
No, there's no sister. It's just a bird.
Well, they're revealing the sister late in the show, like they revealed the witch.
Yes, just like that. Elsa is so grief-stricken that she dies. She just dies.
Mm-hmm.
The end. Fun fact.
That was the end?
Mm-hmm.
Who's the dove?
It's not anybody.
You can't... Okay.
The dove is a deus ex machina that comes from... He's a Grail Knight, and he uses like Grail magic or whatever to summon a dove to take him back to his castle, like in the sky or wherever the Grail castle is.
I hate that. I like the rest of it.
This is why no one likes Wagner.
I just... Come on.
Fun fact, the Wikipedia page on this opera includes a section called Operatic Mishaps.
Oh my God.
And apparently it is like a common curse that the tenors have more than once accidentally forgotten to get on the fucking swan boat to leave. So in 1913, and this is a quote, this tenor named Leo Slezak is reported to have missed hopping on the swan boat, afterwards turning to Elsa with the question, Wann geht der nächste Schwan? Meaning, when does the next swan leave?
That's such good improv.
And it happened again in 1936. So
with this
kids
the same guy.
Don't know, it's a different actor.
Oh.
Don't miss your swan boat. So Ludwig saw this opera and he immediately became obsessed with it. And this became like his whole personality. This is like why he's called the Swan. Well, we'll get to it. The Swan King. That's the German Swan. He was like, this is the only thing I care about now. He started attending performances of Wagner's operas basically any time they were being performed anywhere near him. Because he sort of realized that this was a beautiful world that he could escape into. Because remember, he didn't want to be like around other people.
Yeah,
but he could go sit in his little box in the theater in the dark and watch the beautiful like sets come to life and the deep emotional performances. And he was like, this is the only thing I care about now. So he was just like in Wagnerland until he was 18 when his father suddenly died. And Ludwig became king at 18.
Oh no, but he loves the opera.
And he was like, ack, like Kathy. Like he was like, I don't want to be king. He wrote a letter to Baroness Lienrod that said, I carry my heart to the throne, a heart which beats for my people and which glows for their welfare. All Bavarians may be assured of that. I will do everything in my power to make my people happy. Their welfare, their peace are the conditions of my own happiness. So he took on the mantle, he stepped up, he walked publicly behind his father's casket in the procession for his funeral. And it was the first time that the public had ever really seen him. Oh. And they were like, oh my God, that is actually the most beautiful royal that we've ever seen. And we are now all collectively in love with him. He became like the Bachelor of Bavaria.
But he's just not that cute.
Listen, you have to remember, this is it's Spring Awakening time. That what they're working with is not Leah Michele and Jonathan Groff or whoever. Who was it that originated that role? Yeah. Jonathan Groff. No. Also, again, most beautiful royal, because all the royals of this time period are very inbred.
Yes.
He ascends the throne. His first order as king is bring me Wagner.
Oh.
Because he was like not even allowed to like Wagner before, and now his dad's dead. So he's like, now I have my own money and I want to see Wagner. So he's like, bring me Wagner. Wagner at the time is broke as a joke. He's living like basically in exile because he's like been run out of town. He's like, fuck yeah, my liege. See you there. They meet. They are immediate best friends. Also, Wagner is like, I want to say in like his 40s or 50s at this point. Ludwig is 18, but they're just best friends now.
Oh.
Ludwig also had grown really close with his cousin, Cece, who was his closest best friend. And she is often cited as the most beautiful woman in the world at the time. She was his cousin. And she married...
Do you have a picture of her?
I can find one.
Mm-hmm. I'll give it to her.
She's fine. But she, like Ludwig, they just love beautiful things. And they're like, we're best friends. She married Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria and became Empress of Austria.
I didn't know they had emperors.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I'll talk about this a little bit later. Actually, I talk about this in one sentence. So she and Ludwig got along because they were both considered very eccentric and odd. I didn't write it all down, but Cece had a lot of just like weird idiosyncratic behaviors. And everyone else was like, they're weird. And they were like, we get each other.
Oh.
Something that you should understand about Bavaria at the time is that Germany used to be a bunch of sovereign kingdoms, and Bavaria is one of them. And today, Bavaria, like the region of Germany, is actually the largest by like land mass. But because it is very mountainous and whatever, it's the population to land ratio is like it's one of the least densely populated areas.
Mm-hmm.
At this time, they were moving away from monarchical autocracy. Like they had a king who did a lot of political stuff, but they also had a cabinet secretary who did a lot of political stuff. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like the king was sort of doing all of the day-to-day, but he was like in charge of the armies and that sort of thing. Not to say that he wasn't involved politically, because he was, but those duties were just shared. At this time, Prussia was fighting with Austria. Bavaria was allied with Austria, even though Ludwig's mom was a Prussian princess. She had married into the Bavarian family, like the Bavarian royal family. And as I said, Ludwig's cousin had married the Emperor of Austria. So they're all allied by marriage. The advisors were like, Ludwig, you are going to have to choose who to align yourself with because Prussia and Austria are fighting now and you're the king and we need to ally with one of them. And he was like, I don't want to do war. And they were like, you have to. So he decided to ally them with Austria. He was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I hate it, but I get it. It's fine. Then they were like, okay, you have to mobilize your army. Like, Austria's needs your help. And he was like, I don't want to do war. He was very tuned into affairs of state. It's not like he wasn't paying attention. It's just that he really didn't like this. Like, he didn't want to do war. He just wanted to, like, ride horses, like, hang out and see operas. Finally, he's like, okay, fine, mobilize them. And I'm going to abdicate the throne. I'm going to Switzerland. Not coincidentally, Wagner was living in exile in Switzerland, writing operas there. Ludwig wrote a letter to Wagner being like, should I abdicate the throne to come hang out with you? And Wagner, who now is living on being subsidized by Ludwig because Ludwig has started paying for his everything, is like, no, stay there. He's like, your people need you. Please stay and open parliament in person, which is part of your duty as king. Like, you're supposed to open parliament in like 2 weeks or whatever. And that's like how the country is run. Please stay. And Ludwig was like, gotcha. The day parliament is supposed to open is also coincidentally Wagner's birthday. That morning, Ludwig confers with his advisors. He's like, be right back. He goes out on his usual morning horseback ride. Just keeps riding.
No.
He rides to the train station. He gets on a train, incognito. He goes to Switzerland. He shows up at Wagner's house. The doorman is like, who are you? He's like, my name is Walter Stolzing, which is a character from one of Wagner's operas.
Oh my God.
The doorman is like, Walter Stolzing is here? And Wagner's like, oh no. Ludwig ends up spending 2 days there just hanging out with Wagner and the woman that he was having an affair with. He slept in Wagner's study for 2 days. Oh my God. Just wanted to like be around Wagner.
How old was he at this point? Like 19?
Like 19, yeah.
Oh, what a nuisance.
He's the best. Evidently, Wagner talked some sense into him. And he was like, you have to go home. So he goes back home. Everyone is just standing around, like waiting for him to open Parliament. They're like, where the fuck were you? He's like, I don't want to do war. He finally opened Parliament in person, but everyone was mad. And the people of Munich stood in the streets and some of them like booed him as he rode in his carriage.
Oh, no.
2 weeks later, the German Confederation, which included Bavaria and Austria, declared war on Prussia, and he just like had to be a part of it. He didn't want to. So he went off for 2 days and just stayed at a little villa on an island in a lake that his family owned, riding around in costumes and setting off fireworks with a man who we believe was his lover and was one of the grooms of their like horse stable. So he just hung out with his boyfriend and set off fireworks for 2 days.
So fun.
And there's correspondence of the like other advisors at the time being like, no one can talk to him. When we send an envoy over to like bring a message to him, he has them turned away at the door. He won't talk to us. He's been setting off fireworks so loud that it's like driving everybody crazy. At one point, the fire department showed up.
On his little island? This is fun.
He's 21 at this time. That's how old he is.
This is very fun.
It's very fun. He's 21. The problem is his army is like out there getting fucking destroyed by Prussia. Wagner writes him a letter that's like, go be king and sally forth your army. Fate is calling you, in very Wagnerian terms.
That is very Wagnerian.
This inspired him enough to be like, maybe I can be like the Wagnerian characters. So he puts on his military uniform.
His costume.
He's like, Mother, I'm going to army. He goes to the army with his stuffed animals. He goes to the army in the field, and we have the recollection of one of the soldiers who was eating in a mess hall when the doors opened and Ludwig walked in his military uniform. And he said, quote, he was of such unearthly beauty that my heartbeat positively faltered. So carried away was I that a feeling of anxiety crept over me. This divine youth was too beautiful for this world. I asked the Bavarian comrade next to me at the table, who is that? Our young king, he replied. Like everywhere he was going, he was just like turning heads in his cute little uniform.
Maybe it's like, you know how I have walkie goggles?
It's exactly that.
Maybe people just have like royalty goggles.
Maybe. But they said he was like the hottest of the royals.
Yeah, and there's always a hottest grip.
Fair.
But once that walkie
I'm
headset's
marrying
off,
an AC.
Let's try. My secret boyfriend is a director, so I get it. When he camera ops,
whole nother ball game.
I can't be on set. I gotta go.
Gotta go. In July, Bavaria lost what would come to be known as the 7 Weeks' War. Prussia won. Ludwig entered peace negotiations with Prussia. Ultimately, Prussia was like, you just have to give us like a small amount of land, a little bit of money, and you have to secretly agree to keep your troops at our disposal. And he was like, okay, fine. In my head, I'm like, he's probably like, take them. Like, I don't want to have to deal with them.
I don't want to do war.
I don't want to do war. At Wagner's suggestion, Ludwig decided to go on a tour of the state of Bavaria and visit all the people who had been hit hardest by this war. He loved it. Everyone loved him. He was like knocking on doors and eating dinner with like normal peasant families.
Kissing babies.
He was bringing them like huge bouquets of flowers. He visited wounded soldiers in the hospital. He went and laid wreaths on the graves of soldiers who had passed away in the war. He called in his own doctor for a sick peasant family and had them bring them medicine. He loved his subjects. Like, he started meeting them and he was just like, this is the best. This is all I want to do forever.
Am I going to end up not liking him?
No.
Okay.
I
don't wanna get invested.
He's not a perfect person, obviously.
But who is?
At this time, as I mentioned, we believe that he had begun an intimate relationship with Prince Paul von Thurn and Taxis, who was his close friend and an officer of his. We have one surviving love letter from Paul in 1866, and it's actually really beautiful. If you want to go read it, you can find it. Maybe I'll put it on the Instagram. But by 1867, Ludwig had him transferred, apparently because some jealous people had started spreading rumors that he was like sleeping around, even though he wasn't. And Ludwig was so tortured by the gossip that he sent him away. At the same time, everyone and their brother was like, you need to find a wife because it's 1866 and you're the king.
How old is he now? Like 20?
He's in his early 20s,
Okay.
yeah. Literally anyone would have married him. Ludwig did not really seem to be interested in women. I don't want to speculate on where on the spectrum his sexuality was, but we know he had relationships with men, and I don't think he ever had a relationship with a woman that we know for sure. There were women that accused him of trying to seduce them, but then when you really look at it, it's did he though? More than that, no one had ever taught him about sex and sexuality, and he was raised Catholic.
Oh.
So at the time, especially in Bavaria and in a Catholic royal family, homosexuality of any kind was not permitted, not allowed, especially not for a king. So even when he did come to understand that he was gay, he hated and repressed his sexuality violently. Everyone was pressuring him to find a wife, and his exact words were, "Is it so urgent for me to marry, do you think?"
He said, "Do you think?"
Mm-hmm. And I think he was asking that genuinely.
Yeah.
Do you think, because he really wanted to be a good king, and he was like, do I have to? Don't you think there ever could be a king that just didn't do that? And they were like, no, you have to.
What about Cece?
Well, so cousin Cece is married to the emperor at this
right.
time, but she has a little sister
Oh.
named Sophie.
Is she as fun?
She's beautiful like Cece.
That's not what I asked.
More importantly,
Is she?
she loves Wagner.
Oh, yeah, she is as fun.
So Ludwig had never really noticed her until everyone started being like, you need to find a fucking wife. And then at one day he was hanging out with Cece, and Sophie just was passing through, and he was like, maybe.
You seem like a variation on the theme.
Yes, literally.
That's a Wagner joke.
That's a good joke.
Thank you.
So when he found out she liked Wagner, he was like, did we just become best friends? And they started spending time together. They started attending functions together. Sophie's mom had married all of her daughters off to kings and princes and emperors. And so she was like, this is perfect.
She's a
Sophie's going to
momager.
marry a king. She was a momager. She was, definitely a Kris Kardashian. She's like, Sophie's going to marry King Ludwig. Nailed it.
Was this the last one?
I think so.
Nice.
Or the last one who was of marrying age at this time. And like I said, he started hanging out with her publicly at this point too. So Sophie's mom reaches out to him and is like, you need to make your intentions plain with Sophie because she has suitors all over Europe.
Did she?
I don't know. It's
It's
possible.
a good move, though.
It's a good move either way. It's possible because she's really beautiful, and that's the only thing anyone cared about at that time.
At that time. What about now?
So she's like, you need to make your intentions plain. And he's like, okay. So he writes her a letter and he's like, my intentions are not to marry you.
No, that's not what you meant.
Again, I feel like he's so sincere. Like, he is genuinely just like, I don't want to get married. And they're like, you have to get married. Her mom is furious. Sophie immediately withdraws her friendship and her affection because she's wounded. She loved him. Like, she thought she was going to marry this king and obviously didn't know anything about his sexuality. And Ludwig's mom is also mad. Now all the moms are mad because they were going to set up this marriage. Ludwig is like, fuck, okay, I guess I will consider it. So, and he later said in quotes, Sophie, who was in fact in love with me, was infinitely sad when she learned that I did not feel the same way. Moved by her unhappy state and feeling genuine sympathy for her, I allowed myself to be lured into the ill-considered step of becoming engaged. So one night, they both go to a ball in Munich. They dance together all night. And that night, he comes home and he tells his mom, I want to marry Sophie. So his mom sets it up with her mom, and they're officially engaged.
Mm-hmm.
However, as the months passed, Ludwig showed no signs of interest in being engaged. He's like, I really just want to go to the theater and travel with my boyfriend. He goes on an incognito trip across Europe with the master of the horse, Richard Hornig. I don't believe they had necessarily actually started a relationship at this point, but that summer they fall in love traveling around Europe.
Oh,
He's calling himself Count von Berg.
no,
Because obviously he stands out like a sore thumb because he's dressed. He loves beautiful shit. He's not just dressed like a royal. He has like the best taste in fashion. Like he's just beautiful. So he goes around calling himself a count. So people will they're like, oh, he's noble, but they don't know he's the king of Bavaria. He's running around with his secret boyfriend. In his diary, he described him as the beloved of my soul.
Oh man.
He postpones the wedding to Sophie. He moves it from August to October. As the day is approaching, he apparently weeps openly to his mother about not wanting to get married. He tries to postpone the date again. Sophie's dad is like, the fuck you are. Either set a real date and show up or withdraw your proposal.
Yeah.
So he calls off the engagement. He writes her a letter and he basically says, I got pressured into proposing. I love you, but like as a friend. He says, now that I've had time to reflect and to take counsel with myself, I see that my true and sincere brotherly love for you remains, as always, deeply rooted in my soul, but it is not the kind of love that is required for union in marriage. I owed you this explanation, dear Elsa. I ask for the continuation of your friendship. If you release me from my word and we part from one another, let us, I beg you, do this without rancor or bitterness. Again, like this is someone who just like is in love with the horse guy.
Yeah.
And is like, I was supposed to marry you because I'm supposed to get married, but like, I can't be a husband to you.
Yeah.
During this time, it turns out Sophie was in love with the court photographer. And they later found letters from her saying, before the engagement was called off, with horror, I look upon the future. My wedding day stands like a black shadow before my soul. I want to flee from this merciless fate. His name was Edgar. She said, why couldn't we meet before my freedom was taken from me? My Edgar, I love you so sincerely. When I am with you, I find it difficult telling you how deeply I carry you in my heart. So deeply, I am slowly forgetting all duties towards my king.
I love it.
So she was fine.
I love it.
If anything, her ego was bruised, but she was like, whatever. She and Edgar did break up, and then she did marry a prince a year later. I think probably her mom was like, you're not marrying a court photographer, you're marrying a fucking prince. And that
Is that like their version of a DJ?
yes, it's very much that, I think. So it was fine. But what's sad is that all of Bavaria turned on Sophie because they were like, she's having an affair, and that's why Ludwig called off the marriage.
Aww.
Like, because he was hiding his sexuality. This is around the time when Ludwig discovers his truest passion, the great love of his life, building fairy tale castles.
Yes.
So Ludwig spent most of his reign constructing the most beautiful fairy tale castles in the mountains of Bavaria. His first architectural project. His Firk architectural project.
Listen, my Firk too.
We all Firk sometimes. Who amongst us hast not Firked from time to time?
From time to time.
His first architectural project was the Winter Garden at the Munich Residence. So he hated Munich, which was the capital, and that's where you have to go to do business. And he didn't want to go there. But the family had like a palace there called the Residence, and he never wanted to go. But in the 1800s, there was this trend called winter gardens, and it was basically where you build like a giant version of a sunroom where it's a glass ceiling and walls, and then you plant a garden inside so that you can enjoy the gardens in the winter because it's Germany, so it's like snowy all the time. But you could have like a garden indoors. So the residence in Munich had a winter garden that was built by Ludwig's father on part of the roof. Ludwig was like, I'm going to expand that. If you've ever seen the Crystal Palace from the London Great Exhibition, you know, it's like ironwork and glass. It looks like that. The ceiling was 30 feet high. He had them install an artificial pond and a waterfall on the roof of the family's palace.
Where did the water come from?
They carried it up the stairs in buckets, probably.
Like in Fantasia.
And I don't mean like a koi pond. It was exactly like that, like the brooms.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like a koi pond. This was a pond that was so large that he would invite actors from the opera to the winter garden and they would row around the pond in a canoe. He had a set designer paint these huge murals that looked like the Himalayas all around and had them construct an Indian palace inside. He had a sun and a moon hung from the ceiling, like huge sun and moon.
This is wild.
And if you're wondering, like, how do you have a pond on top of a building? It didn't go well because one night the moon fell into the pond and it flooded and it leaked into his mom's bedroom, which was beneath the winter gardens.
Oh, no.
Also, apparently, the cook's quarters were also underneath the winter garden, and they would take umbrellas to bed every night because that's how often the pond would leak into their quarters. Not long after his failed engagement, in 1868, Ludwig's grandfather died. Here's the thing about the way that their finances worked. The royal family had a certain amount of money that was their money, and it was basically meted out to them every year in like an annual salary. 25% would go to Ludwig, 25% would go to his grandfather, 25% to his mom, and 25% to his brother. When his grandfather died, a quarter of his income, like of the family's income, now went to Ludwig. He started getting 50% of all the royal annual income, which is a shit ton of fucking money.
Oh, he's going to build more ponds.
He is going to build more ponds. Some of this money goes to paying their staff and that sort of thing, but like it's a lot of money. So he was like, I'm going to build a castle. He called it Neuschwanstein, which means New Swan Castle.
Oh, God. Is there a pond there, too?
Just wait.
Okay.
He was like, where am I going to build a fairy tale castle? He picks the most inaccessible, jagged mountain peak he can find. Fucking gorgeous. Beautiful. He's like, I want it there. They have to insert the foundations 165 feet straight into rock.
Mm-mm.
This architectural project became the region's biggest employer for 3 years.
Oh, that's cool.
It's great. The whole town was employed literally for years building this castle. Ludwig hired a set designer named Christian Jank to design it. He was like, I don't want like some boring old architect. I want it to feel like fucking Wagner. It looks like this.
Oh, yes. I was going to ask. Holy shit.
These pictures are going to be on Instagram. To this day, these castles are like what Bavaria is known for. Like they are the
like
most
I have
beautiful.
Seen that before.
You have, I'm sure.
Can
It's
we go?
actually so a lot of Disney's like Sleeping Beauty,
Right.
like those castles are all based on Ludwig's castles.
Yeah, I think that's why I've seen it because unfortunately, I got stuck on Disney Instagram.
All the books about him say he was like a Walt Disney before his time. We're going to talk about it because he just wanted to build these big, beautiful, like magical places. And everyone else was like, no, we're very strict conservative Germans. I don't know what you're doing. But in like nowadays, this guy just becomes like a prolific claymation director or something. You know what I mean? Like nowadays, this is just like he becomes like a Guillermo del Toro or something. Yes. So gorgeous castle. It has these beautiful murals all inside of his favorite operas. It's intricately designed. The interior is covered with dark wood paneling. It's very luxurious. He had them construct an artificial cave inspired by one of Wagner's operas, which could only be accessed by a door off of his study. Like he had them just build a secret little cave for him where he could go in and it's like lit up at night. And here's a picture of
I
that.
want that. Oh, that's so cool.
He's just like a kid. Like, this is like it's like how I just want a house with a bunch of secret passageways,
me
even
too.
as an adult. Like, it's that energy.
Trampoline room.
Meanwhile, war happened again.
Oh.
This time it was the Franco-Prussian War, and by the end, Ludwig's uncle, Kaiser Wilhelm, was declared the absolute sovereign of Germany. Ludwig had to sign a letter saying that he was, and it seems like potentially Ludwig got paid off to sign this letter. It's not totally clear. One of the books I read said we have reason to believe, like based on after Ludwig's death, they looked at the accounting and he'd been getting like a certain amount of money every year from Kaiser Wilhelm's family. And so it seems like maybe the reason that he agreed to this is because they were like, we'll give you more money to build more castles. But he obviously he didn't want Kaiser Wilhelm to be in charge because it was whittling away at Bavaria's sovereignty. Like Bavaria is slowly losing he's losing his like king power because they're now just like kind of like licensing themselves out to another company. He was so upset that he didn't go to the post-war negotiations, even though they were in his favorite place in the world, which was Versailles.
Oh, no.
And sadly, at the negotiations, this is the first time in public that people started to really observe that Otto was not doing well. Like, he wasn't right. They saw him just like staring off into space. He was like acting very erratic, and he would eventually be diagnosed with what we now know as schizophrenia. But schizophrenia ran in their family. They had an aunt who was quote unquote mad. This is the word they use all the time, was mad. They had a cousin who had schizophrenia who was quote unquote mad. And Otto also was afflicted with schizophrenia. And around this time is when it really started to impede his like normal functioning. And in 1872, he was sent to basically be in like full-time care. Ludwig took all the pain of this and channeled it back into castles. He was like, I'm going to build more. He found a beautiful spot in a valley where he constructed a smaller palace that was inspired by Versailles called Linderhof. It looks like this.
Oh my God.
It's just like a little Versailles.
Yeah.
It's white stone carved in a Rococo style. The inside is all gold. The bedroom featured a 1,000-pound gold and crystal chandelier.
God, I love it's so extravagant, and I just feel so bad for the people who had to bring all this
I
stuff
know.
up there.
Remember how I said Ludwig didn't like to be around people at all?
Mm-hmm.
As he gets older, he becomes more and more isolated. He wants to be around people as little as possible. In his early 20s, he pretty much stopped throwing any kind of ball, or like, especially after the failed engagement. He kind of just stopped doing any of the like performative king stuff. Like, he stopped throwing dinners, he stopped throwing balls. He was like, I want to be alone. So when he constructed Linderhof, he had them construct something that would become very famous and it was very innovative for its time. It was called Tischlein Deck Dick, meaning the table that sets itself. He wanted to eat alone. So basically when it was dinner time, he would push a button in the dining room and it would lower the table through the floor into the kitchen. And then the servants and the cooks would set the table and push a button and it would send the table back up.
Oh.
So he never had to interact with anyone.
That's like, it's Postmates.
It's Postmates. He invented Postmates. Yeah. He also had them he constructed just all this weird, amazing shit on the property, including the Hundings Hut, which is a set piece from Wagner's opera Die Valkyrie. And inside it featured a giant fake tree in the center. If you go there today, I think they have a reconstruction of it because the original, I think, fell apart, but you can probably find pictures of it online. He had all this designed by the set designer, Christian Jank.
What a cool job.
He had them construct a hermitage on the grounds, like a little hut out in the woods where he would just go and read books and feed deer because that's like all he really wanted to do. But perhaps the best part of Linderhof is that outside the palace, if you climb up into the mountain, there is a large stone slab. And if you press in the right place, this large stone slab slides aside to reveal a cavern that leads to a Venus grotto, is what it's called. It is a full-sized cave, several hundred feet long, 50 feet high, that they cut into the mountain, and they built out of the mountain.
Oh my God.
It was designed by the set designer. It was complete with stalagmites and stalactites that they created out of like cement and like paper mache or whatever.
Oh my God.
It had uplighting, a lake with a boat shaped like a shell in it.
Oh my
which
God.
he would row around and feed the swans bread that they baked specially for the swans that they brought in.
I'm having trouble.
The lights, there was a waterfall and a wave machine that created waves in the lake. And the lights and the waves were powered by one of Bavaria's first generators.
Oh, that's what generators
He
should be
basically
used
like
for.
invented technology to make this cave happen.
Good.
His intention was to have one of Wagner's operas performed there. But he got a lot of criticism about it, so he never did. But he did eventually have a few actors come and just sing in there for
Why
him.
did he get criticism?
Because they just thought he was too extravagant. They were like, no, we're conservative Germans. This is not what we do.
Look at that.
Also, he
boat.
was spending all their money. We're going to get to this, but like he was like bankrupting the family.
Worth it.
So yeah,
That is so cool.
it's amazing. And it's still there today. I believe it is being restored. Linderhof was finished in 1878. And by this time, Ludwig was in his 30s. His body had started to change. He'd gained a lot of weight. He had lost several teeth because he was afraid of the dentist. Highly relatable. He also was injured. I forget where I put this, but he was injured in a horseback riding accident and he couldn't ride horses anymore.
No.
So he became, at this point, entirely nocturnal just to like avoid having to do things and be around people that he didn't want to be around. He would get out of bed at 6 p.m. He would have lunch at midnight. And then before the horseback riding accident, he used to do this thing called distance rides where he would get out a map and see how long like it would take to ride there on horseback. And then he would ride his horse in laps until he was at his fake destination. And then he would get off and have a picnic with his groom. And then he would get back on and ride back the other direction until he was quote unquote back. Like he would do these fake trips to nowhere where he would just ride his horse the distance.
Why didn't he just go there?
I don't know. I think because he didn't want to be perceived. In 1870, he got into that horseback riding accident. Because he couldn't ride horses anymore, he commissioned the most elegant sleigh. And
Oh
it was
my
real
God.
gold. It had carvings of cherubs like holding up crowns. It had lights on it that were like powered by like a little generator and they would glow at night as he like rode through the Bavarian countryside in the snow. He had it pulled by 4 white horses with like big feather headdresses. His footmen dressed up like Cinderella's footmen. He would wear this like all white ensemble. He would ride his sleigh in the dead of night all throughout Bavaria, and he would stop at peasants' houses in the middle of the night and knock on the door and just show up with like huge bouquets of flowers or like big gifts, wine, cigars. And he would be like, "Can I come in?" And he would go and hang out with them just like in the night by candlelight.
That sounds so fun.
He would eat dinner with them. They loved it. And that's when they started referring to him as the Fairy King because he was basically like fucking Santa Claus, just riding around bringing gifts to
In a
families.
sleigh.
And sitting and talking to like his subjects in the quiet of night. And like, if not for the gifts, you might not even believe that, you know what I mean? It's like, you tell your neighbor, like the king just came to my house randomly and he would leave gifts. Some say like maybe just to prove that he'd been there.
Yeah.
But also because he, throughout his life, just loved giving gifts. That was like his love language, probably because he was raised as a royal. So by this time, he couldn't go to the opera without people staring at him. And he was really insecure because of the weight gain and the tooth loss. And he just felt like didn't want to be perceived. So there was a show being put up that he wanted to see that he had funded, and he demanded a full dress rehearsal that he attended, which at the time was not actually like common. They didn't like do that. They did it for operas, but they didn't do it for other types of theater.
They
and
just wung it?
I don't know. But they didn't do like full like lights and it wasn't like a full dress tech at the time.
That stresses me out.
But he went and he was like, oh, I like to see plays like this by myself with no one else in the theater. And so he started having plays and operas performed in full-on productions for him, only for him.
That's helpful though.
This went on for the rest of his life, and he had in total 209 operas performed for him.
And that's 209 productions that were better off
It's
because
true.
they had a full dress.
It's true. When he had to attend an official dinner, he would have it set up so that he could sit behind a big plant. or big table decoration and have the musicians play as loudly as possible so he didn't have to talk to anybody.
I love this.
These are the idiosyncrasies that people started being like, he's crazy. But to me, I'm like, this is so relatable.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't just stay in his house. Like, he had to go to these things.
I would have dinner behind a giant plant.
Me too.
If I could.
He also, as I said, preferred to eat alone, but like they would sometimes hear him having conversations because he would have a dinner table set for 2 or 3 and then have like a fake, like an imaginary dinner with like some of his heroes. So he would just like invite like Louis XIV to dinner or like Marie Antoinette, who he liked at the time because he liked their style. Like, I don't think he was big on the let them eat cake thing, but he would just like pretend they were there and just like have dinner with them. He allegedly once invited his favorite horse to dinner, but the horse got confused and smashed all the like fine china.
Oh, he literally brought.
Yeah, he just like brought the horse in to
He
have
wasn't
dinner
like
with.
Tina Belcher with her.
No, he really brought it in to like the table that sets itself, and it smashed
love it.
everything. Another time, I don't know how to pronounce this. Is it a chamois? I should have looked it up. It's like a goat antelope type animal that lives in alpine regions of Bavaria. It burst into the Hall of Mirrors at Linderhof. Like, it just got confused and came inside.
But it was like dinner guests.
No, it wasn't. It just
Oh.
came inside. Like, it, sometimes when you just see like a horse go into like a 7-Eleven or like a deer go into like a 7-Eleven, like in a less populated region, and they have to scare a deer out of
Oh,
like a
yeah.
store. It was
I
like
was
that.
like, no, I live in
Not
Los
personally.
Angeles.
When you see a video of like a deer,
Yeah.
and like it was like that. It came inside.
Or like a bear in a backyard, and you're just like, go away.
Yeah.
And the bear's like, oh.
Yeah. My bad. So all the servants tried to like scare it away, and he was like, let it be. At least it doesn't tell lies. Oh, sorry. He said at least he doesn't tell lies.
Oh my God, the drama.
The drama. By this time, Ludwig's obsession and friendship with Wagner was strained. He wanted things done a certain way. Wagner didn't want to do them his way. They fought over the ring cycle because Wagner didn't want to release any of them until all of them were done. And Ludwig was like, I need it straight in my veins. So he was like forcing Wagner to release the first one and the second one as they came out. And then Wagner lied to him about not having the third one done until the fourth one was done.
Smart.
Yeah. But Wagner like lied to him a lot, and like he felt deeply, sincerely wounded and betrayed when Wagner would lie to him, but he still like loved him. Like, he was just so obsessed with him. And he wrote a letter to him in 1872 that said, in spite of every tempest that appears to divide us, in spite of all the cloud racks that pile up between us, our stars will yet find each other. Even when the profane eye cannot pierce through the thick veil to the radiant brightness of them, we too will recognize each other, and when we have at last reached the holy goal we had set ourselves from the beginning, the central sun of the eternal Godhead, that light and life for which we suffered and fought undaunted, we will render an account of our doings, the meaning and aim of which were to spread that light over the earth, to purify and perfect humanity with its sacred flames, making it the sharer in eternal joys.
And Wagner was like, okay.
No, they wrote these letters to each other all the time that were like in
Aw.
Wagnerian English. They were both just like so dramatic in the best
Love
way.
it.
But they were fighting. Ludwig even overcame his hatred of being in the theater with other people in order to attend the final performance of the Ring Cycle. I think, and this is armchair psychology, but I think he was like a little bit agoraphobic by this time. Like, I think he didn't like crowds.
Yeah.
The last time Ludwig saw Wagner was in November of 1880. In 1883, Wagner died of a heart attack. And it's said that when the news reached Ludwig, he stomped his foot so hard that he broke a tile in the floor.
Whoa.
He apparently had all the pianos in his castle covered after Wagner's death and never uncovered them.
Could he play piano?
I don't know.
I
It's
guess
possible.
He was a prince, so he
probably was
had
trained
to.
on some instruments. Otto was put into the care of a doctor named Dr. Guden because his schizophrenia was not manageable. And he was really upset and distressed at having been put away, as I said. And so Ludwig was living his life in fear of going, quote unquote, mad like his brother. And around this time, he also started experiencing some auditory hallucinations, like hearing footsteps and voices. And his servants would say, like, started to catch on, and they would be like, oh, that was me. I wasn't supposed to be back there, but I was there, because they didn't want to, he was so like upset and so afraid of going, quote unquote, mad. But he once wrote on the subject, Insults wound me so deeply that they disarm me. They force me to the ground, and I am sure that they will one day destroy me. A great part of what is taken for madness is really hypersensitiveness. It has often been maliciously hinted and even openly declared that I am a fool. Maybe I am, but I doubt it. A real madman is, as a rule, the only person who doesn't recognize his madness. If I were a poet, I might be able to reap praise by putting these things to verse, but the talent of expression was not given to me, and so I must bear being laughed at, scorned at, and slandered. I am called a fool. Will God call me a fool when I am summoned before him?
No.
And that's where we'll pick back up next time
No.
in the story of the life and mysterious death of the Mad King Ludwig.
Oh my God, I'm so nervous.
Me too.
I like him.
I like him too.
I don't want him to die.
I feel bad for him.
Me too.
It's just circumstance.
He's just a drama queen.
He's just a drama queen. Drama king.
He can be a drama queen.
He can.
That's
He never
more
had a
of
queen, so he could be queen too.
He can be queen too.
It's true.
You can all be queen.
You can all be queen.
If Chapel Roan taught us anything, it's that we can all be queen.
Every single day.
I'm obsessed with this.
Me too. I love him.
I can't wait to learn more.
Me too.
Except for I can't. 'Cause I
Come
don't
back
want him
next
to
week.
die.
Yeah. You can just let him live as the fairy tale king in
I'm
your
going to
mind.
invite him to my solo dinners.
Perfect.
I'm going to be like, tell me more.
Tell me more. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for bringing us part 1.
Come back next week for part 2.
Yay. We don't know.
Stay in your lane.
Buckle the buck up.
Swan kisses. I mean, smooches. Swan kisses. Swan smooches.
We all furk.
We all furk.
We all furk.
So long, folks. Don't forget to furk. Goodbye.